Because, as a matter of fact, I think our audience might know, as you've indicated when you talk about, and as you will talk about some background information, that in a real sense, you became so caught up with Dr. Martin Luther King that you literally almost followed his entire scholarly path.
That's right.
And so you sort of thought yourself a Dr. Martin Luther King scholar a long time ago.
That's
Very
right.
good. I appreciate that. Let's start off, Dr. Baldwin, by talking about your background and information and that kind of information. Then we'll get into the MLK Memorial dedication and some of the things that you believe to be important that our audience ought to know over the next 30 minutes.
Yeah, very good. I grew up in a little town called Camden, Alabama, which is Wilcox County, Alabama, a part of the Alabama Black Belt, and Martin Luther King Jr., as you well know, led a number of demonstrations in that area in the southwest part of Alabama. Selma, we know about the Selma movement of 1965. I remember that movement. Because I grew up 35 miles south of Selma. So I grew up in Camden, Alabama in the 1940s and 50s as a student in high school and college. I did participate in some of the demonstrations, and I matriculated at Talladega College from 1967 rather, to 1971. And after graduating from Talladega, I pursued seminary education at Crozer Theological Seminary in Rochester, New York. And I received the PhD from Northwestern University in Evanston, Illinois in 1980. But my background is very much associated with some of the events that occurred in connection with the Civil Rights Movement.
You know, when we talk about the memorial dedication, I think that I'm reminded of something that you might have said about 5 or 6 years ago, that Dr. Martin Luther King is no longer the old country preacher that we believed him to be for a long time. I think you were among the first to start seeing Dr. King outside of that mode. Let's talk about the image, the change that has come about in reference to that.
As you well know, there's long been that tendency to call King an American Gandhi. Many view him as a Southern black preacher, but I like to view him as a global figure. In his book, Trumpet of Conscience, The Trumpet of Conscience, I think somewhere around pages 30, 31, Dr. King refers to himself as a citizen of the world. He said, I speak as a citizen of the world. So we can't simply identify him with this quest for a new South or this quest for the American dream. We have to identify him with this quest for a global beloved community of what he called the world house. Dr. King said in his final 3 years, that because of scientific and technological revolutions, we have been brought together as a people around the world.
Whether we like it or not.
Whether we like it or not.
Those situations.
That's right. Whether we like it or not, we are part of a world house or a worldwide neighborhood. And we have to learn to live together, Muslim, Christian, Jew, Hindu, Buddhist, people who have different political affiliations, religious affiliations, different cultures, because we can no longer live apart. We are part of a worldwide neighborhood. So I think that captures the image of Dr. King. He often saw himself and often said that I'm a global figure, not a Southern black preacher or one who symbolizes this struggle for the American dream. I like to be considered a global citizen of the world. Global
citizen of the world.
Yeah,
very good.
Yeah.
And of course, Dr. Baldwin, we're getting ready for our first commercial break, after which we'll come back and we'll deal more specifically with that, and especially with the dedication, memorial dedication. We've got about 35 seconds. What do you think about that in a 25-second statement? What do you think about the memorial dedication?
I think it speaks to the fact that Dr. King symbolized the best in the American tradition of protest and dissent. As you well know, the Constitution gives us the right to protest for right. And I think Dr. King symbolized that better than anyone in our history. He was a person who believed that as Americans we have a right to protest for against any injustice in our society.
And of course, Dr. Baldwin, let's take this first commercial break and then we'll pick up at that point. Okay. And we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Thank you, and welcome back to the second segment of the show for today. We're talking to Dr. LBaldwin from Vanderbilt University and a Martin Luther King scholar who's also talking about the Martin Luther King Memorial dedication that occurred recently in Washington, D.C., and the significance of this event. Dr. Baldwin, you were talking about the image of Dr. King prior to our first commercial break. Let's pick up in that area that you'd like to pursue.
Yeah, I think it's very important to understand that once the decision was made to pursue the completion of this 30-foot sculpture of Dr. King, a Chinese sculptor by the name of Lei, L-E-I, Yixin, Y-I-X-I-N, was chosen really to produce this design of the monument. He is in fact a Chinese sculptor, and I think that speaks to the fact that Dr. King, of the global king, you know, there was a lot of controversy about whether or not someone from a different part of the world should be involved in designing this monument.
The civil rights movement.
That's right. The feeling was that someone from America should probably be the designer.
More specifically, exactly. I would imagine that might have been a consideration.
Exactly, but in the end, of course, this Chinese sculptor was chosen, and he produced this magnificent 30-foot granite sculpture of Dr. King, and it's a very beautiful sculpture, inscribed with 14 quotations from Dr. King's speeches, and also it portrays Dr. King as emerging out of a mountain. You, as you well know, the inspiration for the design of the monument came from a line in Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech, where Dr. King talks about hewing out of the mighty mountain of despair a stone of hope. That was the inspiration for the design of the monument, and the fact that we had a Chinese sculptor, a Chinese artist in charge of producing this monument, I think is very, very important, and it sort of reinforces this idea that I've been talking about, King as a global figure, and not someone who
will not be limited by race.
Exactly, a race or culture or nationality, but an international figure.
Very good. And of course, now the dedication, how did all of that happen? I mean, the whole process.
Yes, well, initially, we need to keep in mind that the effort to produce a King monument started back in 1996 when Congress gave approval to the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, King's fraternity, to pursue this project. And Congress gave its approval, and since 1996, Alphas have been engaged in a fundraising process. The monument cost is about $120 million. They've raised about $115 million already. But the decision was made to pursue the project after 1996. And of course, as you well know, we got the Chinese sculptor involved in producing the design for the monument. And certainly in 2011, this year, the monument was completed. And the initial ceremony for the dedication of the monument was scheduled for August 28th, 2011.
Now, why was that date significant?
The anniversary of the I Have a Dream speech. Because King gave the I Have a Dream speech on August 28th, 1963. So August 28th, 2011 was set for that date, but Hurricane Irene, as you well know, came, and then the dedication ceremony was delayed until October 16, 2011. And of course, it was held on that day, and there were a number of speakers, not only people like Jesse Jackson and Andrew Young, who worked with Dr. King, but also President Obama, who gave what I consider to be the keynote speech rather, at that dedication ceremony. And of course, King's son, Martin III, and Bernice King, his daughter, also made speeches. And interestingly enough, they not only, I like to see it as a looking back and a looking forward.
All right.
Because if you look at the speeches that were given during the dedication ceremonies, not only by Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton and King's daughter, King's son, and President Obama, they were talking about what King meant in the 1950s and 60s in terms of the pursuing of civil rights and that kind of thing. But they also talked about the need to move toward the fulfillment of Dr. King's dream today.
It's an unfinished dream.
It's an unfinished dream, and particularly in terms of economic justice, international peace. I think it was Martin III who said, look, okay, we have not fulfilled the dream in terms of jobs and income and economic justice. There are still class issues that divide Americans. So we have to realize that Dr. King's last crusade before he was assassinated involved fighting for garbage workers, fighting against slum conditions, that he was very much concerned about eliminating the problems of poverty and economic injustice.
And that's a real concern that we have here today, and a real sense. I think that when you look at what's going on in the country today, you find that there's quite a bit of poverty, and there's quite a bit of continuing poverty that we've never seen before, I think,
Absolutely.
Dr. Baldwin, in a real sense, since the beginning of the Great Society.
Absolutely.
And now,
with President Johnson.
That's right.
Yeah.
Now, what would how would Dr. King's attitude be in reference to what we ought to do in reference to
I think Dr. King would say that social protest is still one approach to addressing this kind of issue. I think we expect the federal government to address economic inequities and economic problems, especially given the fact that we have Barack Obama as president, and that he should be, the idea, of course, is that he should be sensitive to more sensitive to these problems. But King always said that government action has to be accompanied by social activism on the part of common citizens. That all of us have a role in making the society more economically equitable, okay, so that people will have jobs, health care, a guaranteed income, and that, I think, is the challenge that the speakers at the King dedication ceremony tried to get across. The challenge is that we need to continue to fight for the fulfillment of this dream, not only in terms of economic justice, but in terms of issues of international peace.
Very good. And of course, Dr. Baldwin, let us take this second commercial break, and we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Thank you and welcome back to the final segment of the show for today. The topic is the MLK Memorial dedication in Washington, D.C., and the guest is Dr. Louis Baldwin from Vanderbilt University and a scholar on the life and times of Dr. Martin Luther King. And of course, Dr. Baldwin, let's pick up where we left off the last time. And I think it has been said that there were many speeches made at this memorial dedication, but that President Obama made one that is worth recalling, and et cetera. So let's recall what the president had to say at this time.
Yes, President Obama's speech, I think, was the keynote speech at the dedication ceremonies. First thing he did, of course, was to say that this represented a return of King to the National Mall.
Okay.
Clearly, he had a sense of what happened when King appeared there in 1963 to give the I Have a Dream speech. President Obama also said that King gave voice to our deepest dreams and our most precious ideals and values. And he represented the very best in the American tradition of creative protest and dissent. So he put King in that context. He also said that King voiced the ideals and values of all freedom-loving people.
Okay,
so you get a sense from that speech of the global King as well, the international Martin Luther King Jr. And then he challenged us to continue the struggle because he too, as Martin III and Bernice King had done prior to his speech, is to say to us that we need to do more in terms of creating a society in which there is economic justice, in which people have jobs, a guaranteed income, guaranteed health care. It's interesting that Obama could speak on a very personal level to King's dream because that's been a part of his mission, to bring about universal health care, to bring about jobs, to guarantee an income for every family. So he spoke, I think, on a very personal level and was able to connect King's dream with his own mission as President of the United States.
Very good. And so in a real sense, the dedication was far-reaching. Not only did it touch people in the United States of America, but it touched people no matter what their situation might be all over the world.
Exactly.
And I guess that must be what you mean when you talk about a global king.
Exactly, exactly. Because Obama realizes that we live in the age of globalization now. The world has become smaller. The means of communication, you have communication technologies, information technologies, transportation technologies that have brought us closer together. And Obama realizes that in this age of globalization, we need to reclaim Dr. King, not only around the issues of race, but around these issues of economic injustice and international peace. That King has a message for us today. So it's not merely a matter of looking back to what King meant in the 1950s and 60s, but what he means for us today.
But it's a matter of looking forward.
Exactly.
And the king of the future. Not only is he a global king, but he's also the king of the future.
Exactly.
Which would say that his ideas are good even now as well as the future.
The future.
Why are they so good? I mean,
because we have not fulfilled Dr. King's dream. And I think not only President Obama, but Andrew Young, Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, and Bernice King, his daughter, and Martin III, his son, they all made it clear that, we are celebrating Dr. King here, but we don't live in a post-racial society yet. We don't live in a society where people have economic justice, where there is no poverty. So we have to think in terms of the fulfillment of this dream. Dr. King left us before his dream was fulfilled. And what they were all saying is that we have a responsibility to continue to pursue that dream to realization or to actualization, that it is in our hands. We must become now the caretakers of that dream, of that vision, and bring it to fruition.
Well, do you think that this dedication will do anything, Dr. Baldwin, in terms of making people more conscious of the celebration of Dr. King's birthday?
That's an excellent question.
Because,
yeah. I think so. Now, people can go from all parts of the world to Washington, D.C. on the National Mall, and they can view this granite structure of Dr. King, this granite sculpture, 30-foot structure. And I think it says a lot because Dr. King is the only African American, a person of color, on that mall with a memorial. The only non-president. He's there with Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, and Franklin Roosevelt.
All right.
So it says a lot to us about what we can achieve as a people, because I think it's not only about what Dr. King achieved, but it is about the collective achievement of a people.
Very good.
The monument, and I think that's one of my problems with the monument. I don't think it conveys that enough. The focus is on Dr. King, but Dr. King always said that the achievements in this struggle have come because of the collective involvement of people of color and white, well-meaning white people, people of all races, people of all religions, people of all political persuasions. So I think we have to see it in that light. The monument is not only a sort of dedication to Dr. King and his involvement in the struggle and what he achieved, but I think it is about the collective achievement of a people, freedom-loving people who saw the need to bring America in line with her democratic creed, who saw the need to transform the world so that we could live in a world devoid of poverty, economic injustice, racism, and war.
And considering where the people came from in 1865 after slavery, those are some high ideals and high expectations.
Exactly.
And those are indeed real accomplishments, Dr. Baldwin, while a lot of folks might not wish to recognize it, but to be able to come to leave as a freedman.
Exactly.
To leave slavery as a freedman, and then to eventually end up, as Dr. King ended up, to have one of us on the mall, as well as one of us sitting in the White House.
Oh, man.
I think that's enough encouragement in terms of people who might not be familiar with what has been achieved and who might wish to downplay or perhaps diminish what has been achieved. I think it's a real achievement. And as a matter of fact, Dr. Baldwin, I think that it's an achievement that not many Africans recognize and take advantage of. To understand that this has been accomplished. I think that's a great achievement.
It says a lot about from whence we've come, but as we look at that, we need to keep in mind that we have a long way to go before we realize the fulfillment of Dr. King's dream. And I think that came across not only in the speech of Obama, but in the speeches that were given by Bernice King, Martin III, Andrew Young, Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton. They were all talking about, even as we look back, we need to look forward. We look back at what King gave us, what he did, what he accomplished, but we also need to look forward in terms of what we might do to fulfill that dream.
And I think that this will be aired certainly before the Dr. Martin Luther King birthday celebration, but what can we say about that? I mean, why is there such a non-participation of so many people in such an event as this?
I think the problem is that people don't have a sense of what King was about or what the struggle was about. And that's true not only in the larger community, but in the African American community. I think we all need to work through our institutions, the churches, the schools, the family, to bring people to a greater sense of what this struggle was all about in the 1950s and 60s. And once people get a sense of what that struggle is all about, they'll understand better what the national holiday is all about. It's about not only celebrating what happened then, but also devoting ourselves to continuing Dr. King's unfinished work. And I think that's the unfortunate part of it. We have done a poor job of getting across the history of the movement and what that movement means in terms of the continuing challenge that we face.
Very good. Of course, Dr. Baldwin, let me thank you for bringing that excellent information to us today, and I'm sure that our audience appreciates that. And let me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning.